Like jazz, American musical theater is rooted in the United States and is influential and popular all over the world. Its themes tend to be current, relevant, and vital. One such recurring theme in the American musical is urban life. In the mid-1800s, New York became the cultural center of the country. In Manhattan, theaters lined the street called Broadway. Minstrel shows were beginning to give way to vaudeville, which still featured some blackface, but included more and more characters from immigrant populations, often played by and for the immigrants themselves. Vaudeville expanded into the variety show, which was made up of musical and theatrical sketches, usually linked by some loose, topical theme. American musical theater developed from both the variety show and the European operetta tradition of Johann Strauss Jr. and Gilbert and Sullivan. Plots for early musicals were typically sentimental and contrived, but this changed when composers began looking to literary sources, and after the 1940s, more serious dramatic elements were added. Bernstein dedicated his life to promoting concert music to the general public. Bernstein's most enduring project, West Side Story from 1957, is based on the story of Romeo and Juliet, with lyrics by Stephen Sondheim. The story is set among street gangs of New York City, where the Jets feud against their Puerto Rican rivals, the Sharks, to the dismay of the star-crossed lovers Tony and Maria. The influences of Latin dance music and jazz permeate the score. Great literature has spawned countless ballets, operas, programmatic works, and musicals. The use of familiar literature helps engage audiences while exposing them to new sights and sounds. Born in Massachusetts, Leonard Bernstein went to Harvard and the prestigious Curtis Institute. At age 25, he was appointed assistant conductor of the New York Philharmonic and became famous overnight when he had to step in for a guest conductor who fell ill. That night's concert was televised coast to coast. He eventually became the first American-born conductor to be appointed music director of that ensemble. Bernstein's music straddles the worlds of serious and popular music. He was capable of vivid projections of New York City in this theater music, including West Side Story. Throughout the 1950s, the 12-tone method gained prestige because of its perceived scientific nature. Some composers who rejected 12-tone methods, but did not find older tonal approaches satisfying, developed process music, and a style eventually called minimalism. Minimalist works rely on consonant musical elements repeated and gradually changed over extended time frames. The search for new musical hooks has been an ongoing one. One noteworthy approach comes from the tradition of process music and minimalism. Schoenberg's 12-tone method was widespread in the 1940s and 50s. Its appeal was not only its sonic expression, but in the scientific nature of its method. Some composers began to develop an approach that would treat stable harmonies in a new way. In process music, a composer chooses a simple and harmonically clear musical idea and repeats it over and over, gradually changing or elaborating it over a long time span. Reich and other experimental composers used technology to develop process music. They would record a snippet of audio on a loop of magnetic tape and play several copies of that tape simultaneously. The tape speeds would slowly be changed, combining the loops in various ways. This was called phase music. Reich later experimented with having live musicians replicate the process of going in and out of phase. Steve Reich was born in New York City and studied modernist composition at Juilliard. He really wanted to write tonal music, however, and pioneered process music. Reich also studied and was influenced by West African drumming and Balinese gamelan. Reich's Jewish heritage is central to many of his works, including the Grammy-winning Different Trains, a modern response to the Holocaust. In the 1970s, Reich's approach shifted after encountering the polyrhythms of the Ewe percussion ensembles in West Africa. Their layered, interlocked patterns led him to think about process music differently. As the texture builds up, it becomes less possible and less necessary for the listener to follow the process. This more developed process-influenced style is now known as minimalism. Electronic Counterpoint from 1987 is the last of a series of minimalist works he called Counterpoint. This one is for 12 guitars. The work takes a very different approach to harmony from goal-directed tonality. Ambiguity and complexity are introduced by the layering of instruments in different ranges, and by small shifts in the musical patterns. Eventually, the ambiguity is resolved as the layers peel off. The hook is less the initial musical idea than how that idea is gradually combined with itself. The music of sub-Saharan Africa was viewed historically by Europeans as primitive, a notion that is far from the truth. Composers like Cage and Reich introduced Asian and African elements into their compositions. The East African nation of Uganda was once divided into a number of kingdoms, each with its own ruler and court. Each court had a royal drum ensemble made up of 6 musicians on 15 drums. Some drums are pitched, some are unpitched. The pitched drums create gapped pentatonic melodies amid polyrhythmic structures. Musicians often pay homage to or elaborate on earlier composers' ideas. But copyright laws have become increasingly strict in the last century. In earlier times, using material from another composer was considered a tribute, especially if it was integrated into a new work and expanded to reflect a new perspective. A contemporary of J.S. Bach called this returning with interest. Bob Dylan is widely recognized as an outstanding singer-songwriter. His musical style is distinctive, and his form and melody is always irregular and surprising. Dylan is a poet whose lyrics are full of imagery, presented in unusual forms and metric patterns. Bob Dylan dropped out of college after his freshman year to move from his native Minnesota to New York City. There he met his idol, Woody Guthrie, and made a name for himself as a songwriter and protest singer. In 1965, Dylan started using electric instruments, which spawned a decade of experimentation for him. Dylan is still active today, enjoying a renewed popularity and receiving accolades. Bob Dylan's song, Mr. Tambourine Man, was written in 1964 and 65, and is on his album, Bringing It All Back Home. The song opens with what reveals itself to be a refrain. That refrain is in 2 phrases. An open cadence ends one phrase, and a closed cadence the other. By contrast, each line of the verses is a different length, and all end inconclusively with open cadences. The Byrds recorded a successful cover version in 1965. They added electric guitars and drums, pioneering the genre folk rock. John Corigliano writes music rooted in the language of the past, but at the same time redefines traditional genres. He often writes works for specific ensembles or individuals, taking advantage of their particular capabilities. Sylvia McNair commissioned Corigliano to write a song cycle for her in 2000. Corigliano decided to use the lyrics and poems of 7 Dylan songs, but not their melodies. The song cycle, called Mr. Tambourine Man, 7 Poems of Bob Dylan, was originally for voice and piano, and was later orchestrated. The songs are unified by recurring motives. Prelude is an effervescent and quirky setting of the Dylan poem. John Corigliano was born in New York City into a musical family. Since his studies at Columbia University and the Manhattan School of Music, Corigliano has held prestigious teaching positions in New York. Corigliano writes in very dense styles and has won every distinguished award possible for his music, including an Academy Award and a Grammy. Some recent compositional trends speak to audiences alienated by highly intellectual modernist music. Neo-Romanticism favors the lush harmonic language of the late Romantic era. The music is mostly tonal, chromatic, and highly virtuosic, with innovative timbre combinations. Neo-Romantic works often feature program elements connected with a personal story, as in Jennifer Higdon's tone poem, Blue Cathedral. One recent compositional trend is neo-romanticism, which involves embracing aspects of 19th century orchestral sound, including program music. In a sense, the neo-romantics are modernizing the 19th century orchestral tradition. The Romantic style of the 1800s never really went away. Its music is still widely performed in concert halls. Some composers maintained a commitment to Romanticism, updating it for modern tastes. An example of this is Samuel Barber's lush, emotional Adagio for Strings from 1936. The neo-romantics are reclaiming the 19th century harmonic and melodic language in a new context. Jennifer Higdon is among the most widely performed living American composers. Her style is richly neo-romantic. Written in 2000, her Blue Cathedral is a tone poem which explores her personal grief over the death of her younger brother. The use of characteristic and unusual tone colors, plus the infusion of biographical elements, maintains the 19th century tradition of program music. Jennifer Higdon was born in Brooklyn. She studied with George Crumb and found inspiration in the Beatles. Her output spans most genres and is often described as having an American sound. Her works are firmly rooting in tonality and neo-romanticism. Higdon won a Pulitzer Prize in 2010 for her violin concerto. She has taught composition at the Curtis Institute since 1994. A film's music sets the mood and helps establish the characters and a sense of place and time. Multimedia is often very powerful, especially as a collaboration of several creative individuals. Some of the dramatic musical resources pioneered on stage have now been transformed for screen, film, television, and video games. Music has played an indispensable role in countless memorable film moments. Music in film can serve several purposes. Quite often, it reflects the emotion of a given scene, creates irony through juxtaposition, and creates a sense of time and place. There are two main styles of music in film: underscoring, which comes from unseen source, and source music, which functions as part of the drama itself. In the music for the Star Wars saga, John Williams displays complete mastery of Wagnerian leitmotif technique. Williams also is responsible for the revival of the grand symphonic film score with his accessible neo-romantic style. The soundtrack for Star Wars is a remarkable achievement. Leitmotifs are carried across prequels and sequels, creating continuity and supporting the general nature of a character as they transform. Our example, Imperial March, displays Williams' neo-romantic composing style. John Williams was born on Long Island, New York. He composed for television in the 1950s and shifted to film in the 1960s. By the end of the 70s, Williams was Hollywood's foremost composer. Williams also composes classical symphonic works and is a former conductor of the Boston Pops Orchestra. Tan Dun is a composer of both classical and film music. His innovative score for Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon won an Academy Award. The score presents a blending of Asian and Western music. The cellist Yo-Yo Ma, who was born in Paris to Chinese parents and was schooled in New York, is featured throughout, in a combination with the erhu, a Chinese violin. Farewell combines two melodies representing a pair of lovers, one played by the cello, the other by the erhu. Tan Dun was born in China and grew up during the Cultural Revolution. After hearing Beethoven's Fifth Symphony, he was inspired to explore Western music. His own music was banned in China as spiritual pollution, so he left to settle in the United States. Tan Dun's work combines Chinese and Western styles and instruments to great effect. Music plays an important role in gaming by providing a soundtrack for games as well as in games and apps tied to music making. Games use source music to provide feedback to a player's actions. Underscoring adds intensity and meaning. Unlike film scores, however, the player's choices determine the music heard. No two experiences are exactly alike. This requires a modular approach to underscoring, mastered by composers like Nobuo Uematsu. Uematsu's Aerith's theme from Final Fantasy VII is included in our text. Operatic composers sometimes choose historical topics seeking to convey emotional truths through semi-fictional accounts of past events. American composer John Adams' eclectic approach combines elements of minimalism with traits of neo-romanticism, forging a post-minimalist style in his recent opera Dr. Atomic. Sometimes deeper truths are sought in stories based on fiction, but history has also always been represented in opera. Historical opera is not meant to be a documentary. Rather, it intends to evoke the intensity and complexity of the time. John Adams combines accessible melodies and harmonies with deeply expressive contemporary devices. His music combines a minimalist style fused with neo-romanticism. John Adams was educated at Harvard. In his composition classes, he was steeped in surrealism, but preferred to listen to rock in his dorm room. In 1972, he moved to San Francisco and became an advocate for contemporary music. Adams' early works are minimalist, and as he matured, there was a gradual incorporation of neo-romantic sumptuousness. His stage works are often topical and controversial. Dr. Atomic from 2005 is Adams' third opera about the creation of the atomic bomb and the life of Robert Oppenheimer. Its libretto by Peter Sellers is based on memoirs, government documents, poetry, and Hindu scripture. The drama focuses on the last days and hours before the first atomic test in 1945, exploring the hopes and fears, awe and trepidation of those involved. The Act 2 chorus, at the site of this, captures this tension with a text from the Bhagavad Gita. Dr. Atomic takes on a huge, complex subject, combining science and art. Adams' decision to make art about a lethal technology was criticized. Perceptive listening is achieved gradually with practice and effort. Enjoy music.